Indiana, we are simply passing through history. This is history.
No treasure in silver and gold, mate.
Treasure here? Andy, this whole ship's a treasure.
I want you to imagine this. It's the year 2045. A kid opens a dusty box in an attic and pulls out a strange object. It's flat, black, covered in fingerprints. They turn it over and ask, "Wait, you had to touch this thing?" But then someone explains to them, "Yes, and we carried it everywhere." The kid kind of squints and says, "So you typed on glass with your thumbs and just hoped autocorrect didn't embarrass you?" And then they pause. Why didn't it just know what you wanted? And in that moment, your smartphone becomes what a floppy disk is to us now. A relic. That's what we're talking about today. So the technology we've forgotten is one of the areas we're going to focus, and then the technology we don't realize we're about to outgrow. Let's go.
Talking about gadgets, games, and gears. AI buzzing in your ears. Parents, teachers, kids unite. We're learning tech and doing it right. Oh, it's a tap, swipe, scroll kind of show where zeros and ones are ready to go. From old school DOS to robots that talk, we're jamming with Mr. Fred's Tech Talks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Fred's Tech Talks, the podcast where we explore technology, curiosity, and creativity without getting lost in jargon and hype. So I'm Mr. Fred. I'm a dad, college professor, former Marine, I'm a lifelong tinkerer, and today's episode came from one of my favorite places of inspiration, a drawer. Yeah, a drawer. Not a metaphorical one, an actual drawer. You know, the kind filled with mystery cables or half-forgotten adapters and tech artifacts that once mattered a lot. They could be drawers in your kitchen. They could be drawers in your bedroom, your office, wherever, But that drawer sparked today's episode. We're going to call it Lost Tech Treasures, the gadgets and the tools and the habits we once relied on, and then what can still be taught by them about technology we use today. And the tech that will one day make our kids laugh at us. So in the last episode, I was reminding everybody about when I was cleaning up my workspace, not reorganizing or not optimizing, just survival cleaning. And I found a 3.5-inch floppy disk. And it was labeled. And it was a startup disk. It was a Y2K startup disk. You can go back to that episode and you can listen to the whole story. You know, it was the startup disk that said, if your computer refuses to cooperate when we turn from 1999 to 2000, this plastic square will resurrect it. The disk held 1.44 megabytes. So that's about one photo today. And back then, that disk was power. We didn't just use technology. We understood it enough to respect it. And that respect made us careful. It made us curious. It made us learn how things actually worked. So, let's talk about dial-up internet. That sound wasn't noise. It was a ritual. And while it screamed and hissed, the entire house entered an agreement. Nobody touches the phone, because if they did, the connection was gone. Any progress was lost. Peace was shattered. But dial-up gave us something modern tech often hides. Intentionality. You didn't go browsing endlessly. You didn't doom scroll. You logged on with a plan. Scarcity creates focus. That's not nostalgia talking. That's just human behavior. Let's think about CDs, compact discs, or DVDs, digital video discs, or VHS tapes. I'm not sure what the VHS stands for. We didn't scroll. We selected. We made playlists. We burned discs. Now, For those of you who are younger and you're hearing we burn discs, no, we didn't burn them like in a flame. We took what we wanted and we put it onto the discs, and that was known as burning. And we then went further. We labeled them with names like road trip mix, do not touch, or family summer songs like my family had, do not touch. But anytime you put the phrase do not touch on something, pretty much guaranteed someone else was going to touch it. But you know what? Those DVDs or those CDs, they weren't just collections. They were projects. Order mattered. Timing mattered. The mood mattered. That's sequencing. That's logic. That's coding before we ever called it coding. You know, and I think a little bit more about a CD that I made for my family when I was very young. The children were very young, and we had just gone through 1 or 2 Christmases together. And I realized we were listening to specific songs over and over and over again. I was able to take those songs and put them in a specific sequence on a CD, and that became our holiday mix. I still have that CD, by the way. I just need to find a CD player. All right. So here's the quiet truth. The real lost tech treasures, they're not devices. They're habits. We expected things to break. We tried again. We experimented. We learned by failing. When tech didn't work, we didn't assume it was broken forever. We assumed we didn't understand it yet. That mindset is actually the foundation of programming. It's the foundation of engineering, debugging, creativity. And it's something I care deeply about protecting, especially for kids growing up in a world where technology often hides complexity. You know what, I was also thinking about this. First of all, as I'm doing this podcast, I'm sure many of you had video game systems, and I know that we used to blow into the disc cartridge before we would stick it in, and we really weren't sure why. There was all kinds of reasons, and good reasons and bad reasons not to do it, but we used to do things like that. My early computing years were formed by 2 computers that, well, they're pretty hard to come by now, but I do know one is being resurrected. So I first had a Timex Sinclair 1000. Now this little black box, which it was a really small black box, had what was called a membrane keyboard. So that didn't really have those chiclet keys that we all type on today. It was just a flat type of membrane, a flat piece of plastic stretched over the keys, where the keys would be. And you would type things into there, and that would teach you how to do it. But it didn't have, at least I didn't have, a way to save a lot of the files, except if I connected to a cassette player. Now, a cassette player is something that you really don't see much of anymore, but it was the evolution of how we listen to music, or how we even begin early recordings at home. So I would type up some kind of program, and in order for me not to lose that when I turned the computer off, I had to save it to a plastic cassette. And I put the cassette in the cassette player. I connected the wire to the computer. Now, the trick with this particular device, though, or the setup, was the volume setting. Now, if any of you had this type of computer device, you know what I'm talking about. But you had to have the volume adjusted just right, or nothing would get read from the cassette, loaded, or saved. So I took my mom's nail polish and I put a stripe of, I guess it was red or magenta or something, across the volume setting, so that when I went to use the cassette player to listen to music or whatever, I would know what setting to go back to. And that kind of continued on. My next computer was the Commodore 64, which, as I said, is being reproduced. You can go online right now and order. It's the same form factor, the same look and feel as the Commodore 64 we had growing up. Very cool. But it's been advanced a little bit too. Some cool out ports, and then also some advancements in the processing. All right, so that too, I didn't have a floppy disk. You know, that magnetic storage device. Once again, I had a cassette player, but this one now was designed for the Commodore 64, so I was getting fancy then. And that would allow me to connect to the computer. And we would do those kind of things. And we would spend hours with it. That was our norm. That was our computer life at home. And it allowed us to be mindful of how data was being saved and how important it really was to us as we saved it there locally, not in the cloud. We didn't have the internet back then. So we would save it, and we would save it on our cassettes, and our cassettes became our storage drives. It was little things like that that had us trying and coming back to over and over again. And actually, we would dig into it and understand why that was doing that. And it gave us a little bit further knowledge. Really fun times, really, really cool projects and experiences. So let's pause for a moment. This episode isn't about wishing we could go back. It's about asking one important question. What did older technology force us to learn that modern technology quietly removes? All right, now let's flip the perspective a little bit. You ready? Let's fast forward 20 years. A kid finds a smartphone and they laugh. You carried it everywhere, they say. They learn that we typed with our thumbs on glass while staring down all day. They'll laugh at charging cables and passwords, apps that only do one thing, screens instead of environments. And that's okay. That's progress. Every generation laughs at the tools that came before until they realized what tools taught us. Technology will always change. What matters is how we relate to it. If kids only consume technology, they're stuck when it shifts. And believe me, technology shifts. We're in the middle of a major shift right now. If kids build, question, tinker, and even break things, they adapt. And that's why coding toys, Lego builds, hands-on projects, and even good old outdoor play still matter. The goal isn't mastery of today's tools. The goal is confidence when tomorrow's tools look ridiculous. All right. It's time to bring back the episode's tech challenge. All right, we're going to do something here. This is called the Lost Tech Treasure Challenge. Sounds exciting, right? Okay, so listen closely. This is going to be how it works. I want you to find an old piece of technology, a device, cable, disk, controller of some kind, anything forgotten, and ask these 3 questions. What problem was it solving? What skills did it require? What did it force the user to understand? Okay. So you got those 3? Now and then, I want you to flip it. What replaces it today? What skills are now hidden? And what might we be losing? Now here's the bonus round. All right. Kids, or the young people that are out there, I want you to explain modern tech to your parent, grandparent, anybody that's older than you. Okay, so for my older listeners out there, parents, grandparents, teachers, I want you to explain some form of old tech to a young person. Now, make sure you don't go on and on about it, like sometimes I do. But I would like you to just do that, keep it short, keep it sweet, and let's see where that goes. That conversation is the lesson. If you try this challenge, though, I'd love to see it shared over in the Get Me Coding community. One thing, though, I was thinking about this. Now, this is not high tech, but it's somewhat technical, I suppose. I think about changing the oil in a car. Even a lot of adults don't know how to change the oil in their car, nor do they. They take it to a shop and they do it for them. There was a time, though, when many people would buy those ramps and put them in their garage, and they would drive their car up on the ramps, and they would empty their oil out of the oil pan and put in their own oil, and it'd all be done in their house. So there's that. That's kind of lost. So that's kind of like the example of this, but I would love to hear it. So make sure you do share it over on the Get Me Coding community.
Honey, where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Why do you need to know?
You tell me where my suit is, woman!
All right, so the next time you open a drawer and find an old piece of tech, don't toss it right away. Hold it, laugh at it, learn from it. Because one day the technology we swear by today will be someone else's lost treasure. And if we've done this right, they won't just laugh, they'll build something better. If you enjoyed this episode, all right, if you really did enjoy this episode, and I'm sure you did, I want you to subscribe. I want you not to miss the future conversations that I have planned for this coming 2026. And if you want to keep the curiosity going, make sure you head over to getmecoding.com, where I have hands-on ideas, coding projects, challenges, and behind-the-scenes tinkering. So it's all out there. You could also follow along on social media, where I share builds, experiments, and ideas designed to help kids and adults. You could easily find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm trying to get them to think like creators and not just consumers. All right. Thanks for spending time with me on Mr. Fred's Tech Talks. And until next time, keep playing, keep tinkering, and keep asking why.
Honey, where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Why do you need to know?
You tell me where my suit is, woman!